Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. When I first met my wife, we were head over heels in love with each other, and both of us knew almost instantly that we were meant to be together. My wife ended up getting pregnant while we were still dating, and we figured the right thing to do would be to get married. Everything felt natural for the first 5 years of our relationship. We were happily married and we had a child together that we both loved dearly. I had a great job and she stayed at home and took care of our child. Before we got together, she was actually engaged to another man. From what I was told, she broke things off with him a couple of weeks before I met her. She told me it just didn't feel right and she didn't want to be with him. So she broke up with him and moved out of his house. After that, she went out to a bar with her best friend, and that's where she met me. I always thought the timing of it was perfect. I thought it was fate. Had she not broken things off with that guy, we would have never been together and I wouldn't have had the perfect life that I did. I traveled quite a bit for my job, which was never much of an issue with us. At the most, I would be gone from home for 2 or 3 days a month, and they were always weekdays. I was adamant with my employer that I wanted to be able to spend the weekends with my family so we could make memories together. The first instance that I noticed something was off was when I was on a short work trip. I had to fly into Montana for a meeting with a client, but they ended up canceling at the last minute while I was there due to a family emergency. I decided I'd take the extra time and surprise my family with a weekend trip to the beach or something. I got on the next flight home and called my wife when I arrived at the airport. She didn't answer the first couple of times that I called. That was very unlike her. She would always be on her phone, and not answering was strange. Eventually, she picked up the phone to see what was going on. She seemed annoyed that I called her. She rarely ever had that tone with me, especially when I was out of town. I asked her if everything was okay, and she kind of snapped at me to tell me that it was. I told her that I was in a new burr on my way home, and she seemed shocked. I heard a lot of shuffling around in the background, but at the time I assumed she was moving around. I never thought anything suspicious was happening. She got off the phone with me, and when I arrived home she was very disheveled. Her cheeks were pink, but she had been running around, and she was wearing some pajama shorts and a sweater that was on inside out. I knew that being alone with the kid was sometimes exhausting, but it didn't seem like that was the issue. I asked her if everything was alright, and she told me that it was. She was just surprised to see me so early. I told her about my plan to spend the weekend by the beach, and she immediately rushed off to start packing so we could leave in the morning. She seemed relieved to get away from me. I unpacked my work stuff and went to pack some garments for the trip, and I found a black sock that I didn't think was mine. I picked it up and showed it to my wife, asking what it was. It was a suspicious thing to find. She was confused about what I was asking, swearing that the sock was mine. I'm not going to lie, she was the one who handled all of the laundry in the house. She bought a lot of my clothes and probably knew my wardrobe better than I did. I told her that I didn't think it was mine, but she was steadfast in saying that it was mine. Eventually, I gave up and I believed what she said. I figured she would know better than me about it. Several months passed, and I didn't notice anything else going on. I had completely forgotten about the sock thing by that point. One day I came home from work early, and I found my wife in her bathtub crying. There was no water in the bath, and she was fully clothed, just hiding in the bathtub crying. I immediately rushed over to her and asked her what was going on, checking on her to make sure she was okay. She was almost nonverbal and unable to communicate what was happening to me. I was freaking out, and I rushed around the house to check on our kids to make sure they were all right. I called her mom and asked what was going on. She didn't know either. My first instinct was that somebody had died, but when I spoke to her mother, the person who would have likely elicited that reaction out of her, I started to think something else was going on. I checked our Ring camera footage to make sure nobody broke into the house, but I didn't find anything there. The only thing that was left for me to do was look at her phone and see if that was any sign of what was going on. It wasn't something I was doing to try to catch her in anything. My wife was hysterical and crying, and I needed to figure out what was going on so I could help her. She had it with her in the bathtub, and I went over to her to grab it from her hands. She put up a little bit of a fight giving it to me. I unlocked it, and the screen that it was open to was a message exchange between her and a man we will call Tim. The messages were all very romantic in nature. They were telling each other that they loved each other, that they missed each other, and how excited they were to be together when I went away the following week. I didn't know what to do. My wife was hysterically crying in the bathtub and I cared about her, and that was heartbreaking to see. But I had also just found out that she was cheating on me. That didn't even explain why she was crying the way that she was. Their messages didn't end with a breakup or anything like that. While I was looking at a message from her best friend, let's call her Carol, came through. I didn't read the message, but I called her right away and asked her if she knew about what was going on. I told her that I knew all about Tim and I just needed to know why my wife was crying in the bathtub. Carol told me that Tim was my wife's ex-fiancé. They had reconnected and were seeing each other. The reason my wife was crying was because Tim had died. I felt so many different emotions at that time. It's honestly so unexplainable how I felt. I was angry and heartbroken about the affair, but I felt for my wife because I did love her, but I was so mad at her. I wanted to reach out and help her, but I also wanted to be as far away from her as I possibly could. I told Carol that she needed to come over and tend to my wife because I didn't think I could. I walked out of the bathroom and my wife yelled after me, begging for me to come back and be with her. I packed a bag for our kids so we could go stay at my parents' house for a few days. They didn't need to be around my wife while she was mourning, it would likely be pretty cheering for them. When Carol came over, I left. She tried to explain to me what was happening before I could leave, but I didn't want to listen to her either. Carol was my wife's best friend, but we were on good terms. I would joke around with Carol, and I invited her out for dinner and drinks with us all the time. I felt betrayed that she even lied to me about the affair. I explained everything to my parents when we were at their house, and they gave me some really good advice about the matter. I felt bad about my decision to walk away from her. But they told me that she already made that decision for me. Even though I knew she was mourning, I couldn't be with her. She betrayed our marriage and the only thing left for me to do was leave her. She made her choice, and I wasn't responsible for her emotions after she hurt me. I gave her the weekend at home alone to deal with everything she had to do. When I returned the following week to gather some of my belongings, she begged for the chance to explain herself to me and work on the problems. I told her that there was no explaining that she was telling another man that she loved him and sleeping with him behind my back. However, I did find out that she actually was still engaged to her fiancé when we met. She and I had been dating for an entire month before she broke things off with him. I was supposed to just be a flame, but then he found out about me and they broke up. I don't know if she thought that was going to make the situation any better, but it certainly didn't. I knew then that she had been a liar throughout the entirety of our marriage. I told her that I was leaving her and that there was no sway in my mind on the matter. I knew that she was still very emotional from Tim's death, but that wasn't any of my concern. I started filing for divorce, and as I was doing that, so many people from my life reached out to me and tried to make me out as a villain. My wife had been telling everybody that I left her after she found out somebody close to her died. She was withholding the fact that she found out the man she was cheating on me with died. I made sure to clarify that to everybody who reached out to me, so they knew the truth. I wasn't going to let her lie about me and make everybody we knew think I was some awful man. After that, everybody saw how manipulative she could be, and from what I understand, she lost a lot of friends in our town. The only person who stuck by her was Carol. Who was the only other person who knew about the affair when it was happening? We ended up getting divorced, and I kept the house and all of our assets. She moved in with her parents and comes by on the weekends to see our child. Now let's get into the second story. My girlfriend and I both met during our junior year of college. We went to a small school and it was hard not to notice everyone on campus. I'd seen her around from time to time and I thought she was attractive. However, I never had a reason to go talk to her. We both ended up in the same writing class during the first semester of our junior year. As soon as I saw her, I sat down next to her and struck up a conversation. We ended up hitting it off and we workshopped a lot of things together for the class. A few weeks into the semester I made a move on her and she seemed glad that I did. The first summer that we were apart was difficult because we weren't used to long distances. We lived about 4 hours away from each other, so we weren't able to see each other very often. We talked every day and we ended up making a couple of trips to each other to hang out over the summer. When the fall semester of our senior year started, we were very happy to finally be back together. Everything was great between us when we started. I didn't notice anything strange going on between us, so I was maybe a little oblivious to some things. In hindsight, I can see how she wanted to hang out with me less and was using her course load as an excuse. I had seen her schedule at the beginning of the semester, and she had a relatively light course load. She had a job, but she only worked at it part-time. There was definitely time for her to go on more dates with me or spend more time with me, if she just didn't want to. Whenever we were together, she would be on her phone a lot, and she was often pretty secretive about what she was doing on it. Things continued like that all the way until the spring semester. I had brought up a couple of times how I was feeling, but she assured me both times that she wanted to be with me and that she was just busy or stressed. One night, I texted her and asked her if I could come over to her room and spend the night with her. It was a Friday night, and I knew that she didn't work in the morning. And I just wanted to be with my girlfriend. She replied a few minutes later and told me that she had a migraine from looking at a computer for too long and was about to go to sleep. I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a notification that my girlfriend was online. She told me she was going to sleep because she was looking at a screen all day and had a headache. I figured that she was lying to me about that and just didn't want to be with me because she was scrolling on Instagram. It was painful to have that realization, but I think it was something that I kind of needed. I was a little upset about it, so my roommate asked me about what was going on. I explained everything to him and he told me that it sounded like she was over the relationship already. Then he casually mentioned that she was probably already talking to someone else. I didn't see the correlation right away, but he encouraged me to look into it. I didn't really think much about it right away, but after a few days of stewing on what he said, I decided that maybe it would be worth looking into. She really didn't want to spend a lot of time with me and she was on her phone, quite a bit secretive about it. It made sense that she could have been hiding something from me. I looked online for some clues about how to tell if someone's cheating and I evaluated my relationship against those. I took a mental note of what her snap score was if she was online after she told me she was going to sleep and how often she was turning me down when I asked if we could go on dates or be together. From everything I found, signs are pointing to her possibly being with someone else. One weekend we made plans to go to a concert together. I bought the tickets and everything. She backed out at the last minute and told me that she had to work. She never worked on Saturdays, so right away it seemed like a lie to me. I told her that I was okay with it, and that I would bring my roommate along to the concert with me instead. I told him what happened and he got in my head that she was canceling to be with another guy. I let him convince me of that and I was pretty frustrated and anxious about everything. I checked her snap score while we were on our way to the concert and saw that it had been increasing while she was supposed to be at work. I could also tell through the maps on Snapchat that she was at a restaurant in the city, not at her job near our college campus. My roommate decided that instead of going to the concert, we were going to go see what was going on in that restaurant. When we got there, she was clearly on a date with a guy. They were sitting next to each other and he had his arms around her while they were laughing and getting very cozy. We even saw them kiss a few times. I was heartbroken to see that everything my roommate had been saying was true. She had been cheating on me and lying to me throughout the year. I didn't know how long it had been going on, but she had been behaving a certain way for a while. While we were waiting, my roommate started looking through her social media profiles to try to figure out who the guy was. He put the pieces together relatively quickly and found out that the guy she was on the date with was her stepbrother. I knew that her parents were divorced and her mother had married pretty hastily during the spring semester of our junior year. However, I had never met her family. We hadn't been dating for that long and her family never visited for family weekend or anything like that on campus. I was shocked that she was cheating on me with her stepbrother of all people. I told my roommate that I was going to confront her the following day and end everything with us. He was the one who convinced me to go about it a different way. He helped me plan how I was going to get revenge on them both. Her family didn't come to visit for small things, but I knew that they were coming in for our graduation ceremony. I pretended like everything was normal with us up until then. Every year, the day before our graduation ceremony, our university held a large banquet for the students and their family members. My girlfriend and I had planned on attending that together with our families so we could all meet each other. Everything was going very well at first. Everybody was getting along and I was honestly drinking a little too much wine. The president of the university was scheduled to give a speech at the dinner, so there was a live microphone on the stage in the room. I was feeling a little confident, so I made my way over to the microphone. The faculty around me were a little surprised, but they didn't stop me right away. They probably should have. I started off by congratulating all of my fellow classmates on making it through the year to get to graduation. I turned my attention to my girlfriend and many people in the room turned and looked at her while I was speaking. At first, it seemed like I was just talking about how lovely she was. Then I mentioned how I was surprised to see her on a date with her stepbrother. The room went silent when I brought that up. Everybody was taking in the gravity of what I'd said. They were both shaking their heads and denying it. I explained that I saw them kissing each other and how she was cheating on me with him throughout the entire year. People were pulling out their phones to record what I was saying, but I was ushered away from the microphone by one of the faculty members before I could get into a lot of the details. However, her mother and stepfather were asking her a lot of questions, and she was trying to answer them. My parents pulled me out of the room and asked me why I would embarrass her that way. I was just laughing, and I ended up leaving. My girlfriend texted me later that night and told me about how much I humiliated her in front of the entire class. I didn't really care. She had been lying to me and treating me like I was garbage for an entire year, and I finally found out why. I thought she deserved to be a little bit embarrassed about everything. Our graduation ceremony was the following day, and people were still talking about the dinner. I could see that my girlfriend was embarrassed, and could feel people talking about her behind her back throughout the entire ceremony. I really think I ruined that for her. That was a few years ago, but I am now over what happened. I realized that not everybody is going to be the way that she was. However, I am now very aware of signs of cheating, and I keep an eye out for that in my relationships.